All right, folks, just start wrapping up if you can. We've got about a minute left of our first prompt. So finish a line, finish a sentence if you need to. And we are done. Okay. I hope that felt good. If it didn't, that's okay. Take note of it. If it felt really bad, let me know. But if you have anything that you'd like to share, if you wrote down something that you thought, oh, hey, that was really good. I want people to hear that. You're more than welcome to type that in the chat, and we'd love to read it. But we are going to move on to self-trust and intuition. When we talk about journaling for self-trust, when we talk about self-trust, we are talking about our ability to meet our own needs for safety or for whatever else, really. Do we know that we're going to be able to do what we need to get through the day or through a difficult situation? Can we take care of ourselves? Are you a person that you can rely on in a crisis? Self-trust is something that it comes with the knowledge that no matter what you're faced with, you know that you are not going to give up on yourself. That's what self-trust is. It also includes intuition, which is what we call those gut feelings, your ability to trust your gut. Have you ever been with someone who kind of rubbed you the wrong way, or been faced with a situation where you were like, ooh, I've got a bad feeling about this. I can't put my finger on it, but I don't like it. That's what intuition is. It is a form of knowledge that shows up without any conscious awareness on our part. It's when you know something in your bones without having to be told about it. Intuition is a feature of our subconscious mind, not of our conscious mind. It goes through all of our past, like, accumulated knowledge and experiences. It ticks through all of those things to form an educated guess as to what might happen. So it takes a look at patterns, past experiences to inform how you are going to feel and react in the present. And your intuition is often right. It is often spot on. Feelings and conclusions that we might come to based on our intuition seem to pop up fully formed, like it's an idea that is all the way baked. And we may not know where it comes from or why we feel how we feel, but we feel it very deeply. And that informs how we're able to react to a situation or to a person. So part of self-trust is knowing to how or when to trust your intuition. But there are some barriers to self-trust. But before we get into those, I want to ask, how would you rate your level of self-trust? On a scale sort of from I have complete confidence in myself and my instincts and my abilities to I have zero confidence at all. I have to question every decision I make. I rely heavily on other people's input. So I'd like to get a sense of where we are there before we talk about barriers to self-trust. Right. Yeah, just take a couple more minutes or a couple more seconds to answer that question in the poll. And I'm going to close that out now. All right. So we have a good chunk of people who feel pretty comfortable trusting their instincts and their ability to care for themselves. That's great. We'll we'll talk about how to grow that sense of self-trust as well. But for now, we're going to talk about some barriers to self-trust, because abusers or people who use abuse try to destroy a victim's sense of self-trust, try to wear it down over a period of time so that the abusive person is the only voice. The abuser's voice is the only voice in the survivor's head. Survivors of abusive relationships might struggle for a really long time to rebuild trust in themselves after an abusive relationship. And that's because of these three, what we've identified as three really major barriers. One of those barriers is gaslighting. Abusers kind of train, they accustom their victims to ignoring or questioning their instincts. They condition victim survivors to question the reality of their situation. An abusive person might have a survivor or a victim survivor questioning, like, am I crazy or is this really happening? Like, if you're going back to the original source of the word gaslight, which is the movie, The Gaslight, the woman is constantly wondering, like, oh, I'm not going crazy, but it's darker in this room, right? And the husband's been like turning the gas lamp down so it's dimmer in the room every day. But he's going to tell her, no, you're crazy. The light is as bright as it always was. So gaslighting is an abuse tactic. It's used to make victim survivors question the reality of their situation, question their judgment, question their instincts. If gaslighting is used in an abusive relationship, a victim survivor might internalize the idea that they can't trust or believe what they see. They can't believe what they see with their own eyes or trust how they feel in their own brain. Another method or another barrier to self-trust for survivors is victim blaming, especially for people who are just coming out of abusive situations, or who are telling about their experience of abuse for the very first time. Friends and family might say, oh my gosh, I had no idea that you were going through that. Everything seemed fine. You seemed like you were doing well. He seemed like such a nice guy. It's really hard to believe that they do something like that. Those types of comments, while they might be meant well, enough of them might pile up to get the survivor thinking, well, man, everybody else seems to think that this was a surprise. Nobody else saw this coming. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I've been saying it was, because nobody else seems to think so. So victim blaming could get somebody to think maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I'm the real problem. It wasn't my abuser. Maybe it was me. And victim blaming can also happen internally too. If a survivor blames themselves for the abuse, the survivor might not think that their intuition is reliable anymore, that since it's their fault for getting into an abusive relationship, they can't be trusted to act in their own self-interest. So enough of that external victim blaming, it can go internally, it can become internalized, and the victim survivor might not trust their own instincts or sense of self anymore. Another barrier to self-trust that is internal is past mistakes. Even if they've already happened, they're done. But self-trust could be damaged when you make a decision that you know to be bad for you or not healthy. If a survivor, especially for survivors, if they've had to make a really tough call, like have to choose between bad or worse, that could be something that they blame themselves for. It could be that an abuser has forced a survivor to do something that goes against their values or against their traditions. And a survivor could blame themselves for engaging in that thing that went against their values. The survivor would focus on the wrongness of that decision. Oh, I can't believe when given a bad versus worse choice, I chose bad. Oh, I made a bad choice. The survivor's focusing on the wrongness of the decision rather than the context of the decision, where, oh, I was given two really terrible choices and I had to choose the one that was less damaging. So that's a way that a survivor might blame themselves or hold a grudge against themselves. It's really important to practice as much forgiveness as you can so that you can move on and rebuild trust with yourself in those instances. So those are barriers to self-trust. We talked about intuition. There we go. And now our first full-length prompt for the day. I want to kick off with a quote from Christina Baldwin, who is the author of a couple of books on journaling and storytelling and self-trust. And she says, by writing about memory, we can observe patterns of survival, learn from experience, and celebrate our resilience. So we're going to spend some time writing about memory. These bullet points are questions you can respond to in your journal. We'll have 10 minutes to write about these things. How far back can you remember? Were memories important in the family or in the community in which you were raised? Were you raised around people who liked to reminisce or who liked to talk about the past? And what was acceptable to remember or to talk about? What memories were forbidden to discuss, or what things did people around you growing up deliberately not talk about? We're going to take 10 minutes to write through some of these things, and then we'll talk a little bit about why we're talking about these things in self-trust. So go ahead and grab your writing utensils, and I will give you a little 1 or 2 minute warning. Take your pencils out and let's go. All right, this is 1 minute warning. We have about a minute left, so just finish a line. If you've got a last sentence that you're trying to finish up, go ahead and do so. And for those folks who are just joining us, we are finishing up our first for real journal prompt about memory and trust. You will get a copy of the slides with all of our prompts in them in your email after this webinar, so you will not miss out on a thing. All right, we've got about 10 more seconds, so go ahead and wrap up. Put the pencil down. You've been writing for 10 whole minutes, and that is a lot. So go ahead and stretch your hands out, shake your wrists out if you need to. But why are we writing about memory when we're talking about trust? It all goes back to intuition and about how our brains are pattern making machines. We talked about on this last slide how intuition relies on our past experiences and accumulated knowledge. Our brains are looking for patterns all the time, and our brains comb through our memories to look for patterns. So I wanted to spend some time on our memories, because that's the source material that our intuition comes from. When we are looking for answers, when we're looking for information on how to respond emotionally to a situation we're in or to a person who's with us, our brains are going through years and years of memories and data to make an informed decision about how to react in any given moment. So I think it's important to be thinking about like the emphasis or the importance that we gave memory growing up, because I want us to be thinking about whether intuition was important growing up, whether the people who we were raised with or by or around thought that memory was important. Because if they didn't think that memories were important, or if there were only very specific things or types of things you were allowed to remember or discuss, that might affect the file cabinet that your intuition is rifling through. So if you did write anything down, if those prompts were especially fruitful for you, feel free to share in the chat. I will also say somebody asked a very good question about, are we going to write about traumatic memories? And my answer is absolutely not. If you do not want to go, this workshop is designed to meet you where you are. If you're not ready to dig like deep into your trauma or deep into difficult memories, you don't have to. You can just talk about remembering the good times at the Thanksgiving table. You can keep it light and breezy if you need to. I am not ever going to ask anybody to traumatize themselves through the written word. We've been through enough of that. You don't need to do that again. So keep it as light as you'd like to. If you want to engage a little bit more deeply, feel free to do that as well. Just make sure you're not biting off more than you can chew here. So let's talk about how to build self-trust. We did spend some time on how abuse can really grind down a victim survivor's ability to trust themselves. But after abuse, how do we get that back? Because trust is not something that can be rebuilt overnight once it's been broken. So how do we go about doing that? There are a couple of methods, and we'll talk about each of them. The first that I like to talk about is by keeping promises. We can rebuild our self-trust by keeping promises to ourselves, no matter how small. The most important person in your life to be accountable to is yourself. So even something as simple as promising to drink a glass of water every morning before bed, or every morning after you wake up from bed, even just following through on that, or maybe spending a few minutes a day journaling, no matter what. Even little things like that, knowing that we can follow through, that we can trust ourselves to follow through on things that are good for us or things that we need, is so important. So it doesn't even matter what kind of promise it is, but if you tell yourself, I'm going to do something, or I'd like to do this thing every day, follow through on it. Know that you can trust yourself to be there for yourself. Show up for yourself. Another method is deals with intuition. Our gut feelings, our intuition is right so much more often than we think, especially as we begin to rebuild our self-trust after trauma or after abuse. You can actually practice listening to your intuition. It's a skill that can be built. Your intuition's always there. You don't need to practice having intuition, but you can practice listening to it, and engaging with it. To do this, you really just keep your feelers out. You keep your ears open or your eyes open for those gut feelings. And when you have a gut feeling, pay attention to it. You don't have to act on them right away, especially if you don't trust them, but do take note if you're feeling something in your bones, like, oof, this doesn't feel right, but I don't know why. Take note of that. Maybe write those gut feelings down if possible, perhaps in a journal, and then maybe a while later, go back and look at that gut feeling, return to it and evaluate. Was it right? Did it end up being correct? Before long, you're gonna know enough to establish a pattern. You'll be able to look back through those checks you did on your intuition and realize that your gut feelings have probably been right all along. It's just, you need to create for yourself sort of a track record of having listened to your intuition. But yeah, really, really tuning in, really practicing listening, and then evaluating after the event has passed, can really give you a sense for, wow, yeah, I have the stats, I have the statistics on this now. My intuition is right. I can prove it because I've paid attention. And not self-care, tender loving care is the next step for rebuilding self-trust, or another method of building self-trust. Child psychology tells us that infants learn to trust when adults respond to their requests for comfort. So as an infant, when you cried, if somebody was there to pick you up and soothe you, you learned that if you were having a hard time or if you needed something, you learned to trust that somebody was going to swoop in and pick you up and take care of you and give you what you need. Can you do that for yourself? Can you be a warm, comforting presence for yourself? Find ways to be kind to your own inner child or your own inner infant who's got a soiled diaper that needs changing and is crying. Give yourself a hug. Take a day that's just for you, if possible. We don't all have those options, but just do something for yourself. Try to do at least one thing every day that makes you smile. Because to build self-trust, we need to learn to count on ourselves for love. And finally, this one is really hard. Part of building self-trust is getting help when you need it. One of the definitions of self-trust is I can take care of my needs and safety. So you need to know, to have self-trust, you need to know that you're always going to be there for yourself. And part of that is knowing when to ask for help. which is hard. But when you're in need, when you're afraid or unsafe, or you're just feeling a little down, try your best not to ignore that reality. Do whatever you can using whatever energy you have to do something, to do anything that might help you. This could mean reaching out to a friend, finding something to eat or drink, or making an appointment with a medical or mental health care provider, because you need to learn to trust that you can take care of yourself and you can be there for yourself. You deserve to have help when you need it. So if you need it, go and get it. With all that being said, we are going to launch our final poll about which method of building self-trust would you most like to strengthen in your own life. So do you need to do some work on keeping promises to yourself? Do you need to do some work on paying closer attention to your intuition? Do you got to work on being kind to yourself, or on learning to ask for help? I have a feeling, based on how many service providers we have in the Zoom right now, that asking for help is going to be a big one. But we'll find out in just a moment. Thank you all for participating in this poll. And I'm going to close it out in just a couple of moments. All right. We are at about 75% of folks responding, and the results are in. We are mostly a group of folks who are trying to get better at asking for help. Please do it. Please ask, even if it's just, can you help me open my water bottle? Practice that muscle memory. Say it in the mirror. Can you help me? Can you help me? Get comfortable saying it. Get your jaw comfortable. For those of us who are in helping professions, our jaws don't understand how to move to say, can you help me? That is foreign language territory right there. So practice it in the mirror. Practice it with a friend. Just get yourself used to saying that. Get your ears and your eyes used to hearing that. Because it sounds weird coming out of your own mouth if you've never said, can you help me, before. So just please do it. You all deserve help when you need it. All right, and we are moving on to another journal prompt. Part of self-trust is knowing that we can care for ourselves by any means necessary. We will do what we can do to show up for ourselves. We want to have our own backs. We did talk about, in the last slide, we talked about the inner child and about how trust is developed. The sense of trust is developed way back in our developing infant brains, where we would cry, and if we were in a good situation, someone who loved us would pick us up and soothe us and tell us it would be okay, or meet our needs if we had them. So this prompt is going to go along with that. Think back to being a child, when maybe all you ever wanted was someone to believe in you, someone who wouldn't give up on you. In a lot of ways, we are all still that child, but we also get to be the person that child wished for. We get to be the person who doesn't give up on us. So we're going to take 10 minutes and describe your inner child. It can either be like your true self, who you were as a child, or it can be a new imagining of your child self. What might that be? Some possibilities for this prompt, some questions to answer. What does that inner child look like? What brings them joy? What do you love about your inner child? And what does that inner child need most in this world? During these 10 minutes, be gentle with yourself, with your grown-up person who is writing. And be gentle with your inner child during this time too. Try to give your inner child the love that they deserve. We are going to take 10 minutes. Go ahead, and if you need to step away, step away. But I am setting a 10-minute timer for now. So go ahead and get started. Okay, folks, that is our 1 minute warning. You have about 1 more minute just to finish up your lines. If you've got the rest of a sentence that you got to get out, you've got a little while longer to do that. While you all were doing your journaling, I went back through the chat to see what folks were saying, and I have to tell you, I am just so thrilled with the conversations that you are all having in the chat about self-trust and resilience, and about whether journaling is a good way to do that. So thank you all for really engaging with that. And that's time. So that was our second full-length prompt. Thank you all so much for just showing up to that. We're going to talk about journaling. Why do it? And there are a lot of reasons. I mean, I could tell you in a very biased way, do journaling. It's really great. It's very helpful for me. But what about objectively? What's so great about journaling, or what does it do for our sense of self-trust? What journal writing does is it increases our own awareness of ourselves and of the situation that we're in. So the more we write, the more we write about, the longer we do it, we are able to look back, especially if you look back and read your old journal entries, you're able to recognize patterns of thinking. You can go back through your entries and say, oof, I have a habit of engaging in maybe some black and white thinking or some negative self-talk. You can go back and look at those patterns. You can also sort of see how you've changed as a person. I know I am not the same person I was when I was 9 years old and just started journaling. I am a different person now. And it is fascinating to go back through and watch myself change and grow, to look at the problems that I was struggling with in years past, and notice how some of those problems just melted away, and others I really had to work for. I really had to work to solve. Writing also allows us to celebrate our resilience, to look at what we've been through, or look at the hardships that we've experienced and say, oh, hey, that sucked. That was really hard at the time, but man, I got through it. So it allows us to chronicle those hardships and celebrate the fact that we've overcome them. It allows us to spend quality time with our subconscious, to get to know ourselves on a deeper level. It's self-guided. Journaling is. It's a gentle process. You only have to write about what you're ready for. If you're not ready to go deep yet, and you just want to build up the muscle memory of journaling by writing, today I did this, today I did this, I felt this way, I saw this person. If you just want to record first, that's okay. You can dip your toes in. You don't have to immediately get really confessional with it. You can start wherever you're ready. Journaling is also great because it's private. It's not anybody else's. It's yours. You don't have to filter for anybody. You don't have to edit yourself. I know when I first started journaling at 9 years old, I thought, man, somebody 1,500 years from now is going to read the diary of a 9-year-old girl. I'd better be really good. I'd better be a really good writer. And when I had that idea in the back of my head that I'm journaling to be read in the future by strangers, that really colored the way that I journaled and the things that I wrote about. I was trying to make myself look better or look more accomplished, and that's not the point of journaling. It's for you. So when I finally ditched the idea that somebody was going to read this and have feelings about me, I started being able to write what I actually wanted to write, to journal how I actually wanted to, and in a way that was going to be helpful for me, instead of my journal being another place where I put on a mask to the rest of the world. My journal is a place where I take that mask off, and I am who I am in my journal. Warts and all, neuroses, imperfections, I am there. Journaling is also great because it does build self-trust by literally documenting. If you're just saying, here's what happened on this day, and here's who I was with, and what they said, and how I felt about it, that's documentation. That's actually really great for folks who are still in an abusive relationship, because they can go back and prove to themselves, no, I wasn't making this up. This really happened, and I did feel that way. It's a really great, journaling is an excellent antidote to gaslighting, because even if somebody's trying to tell you that the abusive thing or the difficult thing that happened to you wasn't real, or wasn't that bad, or didn't happen at all, you can get out your journal and say, no, actually, here, these are my receipts. This really happened. So that's very helpful. But it's also a really great place to celebrate. The fact that you are journaling is cause for celebration sometimes. And to trust yourself, you also need to know that you're going to say, yay, I did a good thing. And if journaling becomes a regular practice for you, it builds consistency, which is great. Consistency is another tenet of self-trust. You need to know that you're going to keep showing up. Prolonged contact with the inner self through journaling is transformative. It strengthens our understanding of our subconscious and of our intuition. And we feel closer to ourselves and more able to trust who we are. The more time you spend with somebody, the more you learn whether or not to trust them, right? So if you're spending all this time with yourself through journaling, you're learning to trust yourself. And we are moving to our final prompt of the morning, which I'd have to say this one is my favorite, because it's a celebration. Today, for our last prompt, we are going to take 10 minutes to write down all the ways that you show up in the world. Who are you to other people? Sure, you can spend some time talking about how you're a teacher or a mom or a son or an advocate. Who are you to others? But also, who are you to yourself? What's the thing that you think of first when you think about who you are? What pops up first? Who are you to yourself? And then secondly, spend some time thinking about what you can count on you for. What special qualities, what passions, what warmth do you bring into the world? What's good about having you here? And bear witness to the warmth and the good things that you bring into your own life. Show up and celebrate all of the good energy that you put out into the world. Name that energy. Name the way that you show up. We'll take 10 minutes. It'll be our last 10 minutes, our last 10-minute prompt. And I'm excited. I'm excited to hear what's going on. I'm going to start the timer, and I will see you again in 10. Okay, everybody, this is your 1 minute warning for our last prompt. Go ahead and finish up whatever you need to. Take this time, don't interrupt yourself, but just kind of work yourself to a good stopping point. You're celebrating yourselves. I hate to interrupt that, but it is going to be time for us to leave here shortly. So I want to make sure you're ready. And I will say, this prompt, while not super directly connected to self-trust, I think it's good to know that we can count on ourselves to celebrate ourselves too. We can trust ourselves to, if nobody's got me, I know that I've got me. If nobody else sees my accomplishments or the good ways that I show up in the world, I know that I do. And that has to count for something. So just finish that up. And I hope this is a useful prompt that you can use later on. You don't have to just be done with this now. You can take it, you can save it for later. You can come back to it. All right. And that is time. So take a moment, take a breath and shake your hands out a little bit. Those were our prompts. You did that. We really did that. As we wrap up, I want to just thank you so much, everybody, for showing up to this workshop. I did not see your faces. I did not hear your voices, but I'm feeling your energy. I am just so grateful for the ways that you showed up for yourselves and for each other and here today. While I am talking this little wrap up talk, feel free to share anything that you wrote from last prompt in the chat. I would love to see some of that stuff. So just please go ahead and share. Journaling and self-trust are really intimidating concepts. And so combining them can be very fraught with emotion. It can be tough. So however you've shown up today, whether you made it through all of the prompts or not, whether you engaged with any and all or none of them, I'm so grateful. And I want you to be able to express that gratitude for yourselves as well. It takes courage to begin anything. And now we're here at the end. So you've shown that courage for 90 minutes and that's huge. That's a really big deal. When you close out of Zoom this afternoon, well, not quite afternoon for me. When you close out of Zoom, please do what you can to take care of yourselves. We did some deep stuff today. Depending on how deeply you engaged with today's activities, you might be feeling really delicate right now. So if it's possible, I know we're all busy, but if it's possible, try to take at least 10 minutes between this and your next thing and the next event you've got going on today. Just to breathe, drink some water, reflect. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that I can share the link to the webinar survey and info on how to request a certificate of attendance. So there's that. I am going to stop recording too.